Okay, so I'm going to show you how every letter of the alphabet can pretty easily be created by starting with the same shape, and that shape will be a square. Now, if you draw a little bit more of a rectangle, that's not going to be a bad thing at all, so don't worry about that. So we're going to do every letter starting from A all the way through Z, and then I'll give you a project based on this concept. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with the letter A. So, which means we're going to actually start with a square. And this is essentially going to be a guideline. So with guidelines, parts of them are going to be erased. So make sure that you keep your lines pretty light, and you do that by holding your pencil lightly. Okay, see, that's arguably a square, maybe more of a rectangle. Not a big deal. Okay, so now we're going to form the letter A. Now, so what we want to do, let me introduce you to a term that I use sometimes, which is point. Now, when I say point, it simply means where this line touches that line, where they connect. Right in the corner, there's the point. So when I use point, know that I'm talking about the corner. Okay, so, and we're going to do capital letters, by the way, as well. Okay, so we're going to start from this point, and we're going to create a triangle, basically. So we're going to go to the center between these two lines here. And now we're going to go from this point up to the center again. And ideally, we want to connect with that line to form a triangle. So now what we can do is, and we could do this now or later, but now we simply erase our square or rectangle, and now we have a triangle. So now what we want to do to complete the A is we want to follow the same angle this line is. We want to establish the thickness that we want our A to be. So I'm going to go about right here, and now I'm going to follow the same angle as the line. And we're going to essentially create a trapezoid in this area. So I can go to this side and kind of eye how wide it is from here to here and replicate that on this side. And then we're going to go straight across like that. And we can erase this line. And we can do this at the end as well. So, and then so we want to again sort of maintain the same thickness. We're going to create a flat bottom like that. And I say bottom because we're going to turn this into a triangle. So we're going to follow the same angle on this side, the same angle on this side, and that forms the letter A. Now let's quickly go ahead and do the letter B as well on the side of the letter A. So once again, we're going to start with a square or a slight rectangle. Okay. Okay, now what we want to do is we're going to create triangles in this area and this area by rounding off these corners. So see how I rounded that off? So now there's a little triangle in this area. And we're going to erase that line. And we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to round off this corner. And in doing so, we're going to leave a little bit of a triangle here. Now we can erase that line. So now it looks like the letter D. So now what we want to do is we're going to create another triangle in here. And it's going to have a little bit of, it's going to have some roundness to it. So see how I rounded that off? Like this. And now I'm going to round this off and meet this point here. See that? See the little triangle shape that's left? Now we erase that. And we've got the letter B almost. So once again, if you want to maintain the same thickness that we started in the letter A, then you can kind of measure that visually with your eyes. And you can actually do this in other ways as well, in terms of getting a sense of how wide things need to be. So, and I might as well go ahead and do the top part since I'm in the area. So now what we're going to do is we're going to follow the same curvature we have here to complete the front portion of the B. Again, always being mindful of how thick we want our letter to be. There we have that part. So now again, same thickness. I'm going to kind of maintain the same thickness and follow the same curve on the front part and then pretty straight across the top. And that is our letter B. Okay, now I'm going to turn this over and do the letter C. The same thing. We want to start with a square. And this square is not turning out perfectly. Good example of why you want to make sure your lines are always nice and light so that you can always easily make changes and corrections. Alrighty, so there's our square for a letter C. Now, as we did with the letter B, we're going to round off the corners here, and as a result, we'll see a little triangle shape left there. And keep in mind, there are many different lettering styles to do. And we can explore some of those later. So we're just doing simple, basic lettering here because this doesn't even have to be rounded. It could be squared, like this, for example. So, but let's go ahead and round off this corner. Okay. Erase that. Looks like the letter U. Let's go ahead and round off this corner. That. And lastly, let's round off the remaining corner. Okay. And now what we can do is go ahead and draw either a rectangle or a circle in the middle, or actually more of an oval. So if we wanted to do an oval, which probably we should because it would make it more consistent with the other letters that we've done so far. Here we have it. So the last thing we're going to do is, because we've got the letter O, the last thing we want to do is take out a little bit of it, depending on how close you want this part of your C to be. You can take out a square, maybe more of a rectangle. Let's see if I took that shape out. That's what I'm left with. And if I wanted to create more spaces or more space here, I would simply take out a little bit more on this side. You see? You can add more, take out more. Okay, now let's go ahead and do the letter D. And the letter D involves starting with a square, of course. And we've actually done the letter D before with the letter, when we were doing the letter B, you might remember. So you might sort of know how to do this already. So now we're going to round off this corner and this corner. Okay, and then we're going to round off this corner. And eventually erase these corners. And then we're going to go ahead and do the inside. And again, being mindful of how wide we want our D to be. And we're going to go ahead and, again, as we work around this way, we want to keep in mind visually where we are in terms of how thick or narrow our other areas are. And essentially we're drawing a D inside the D, just a D, regular D, the way we're used to doing it. So there's our D. Let's do our letter E. So we're going to go ahead and draw a square, of course. Now we're going to figure out how wide we want it. And I'm just going to make mine consistent with the earlier letters. There we go. Now, we're going to do a rectangle here and a rectangle here, and that's going to form the letter E. Now, if you wanted this middle portion a little bit shorter, you can, of course, do that in one or two ways. You can just make it shorter here. You can go all the way across and then finish the bottom portion and then erase or make a line here and erase the amount that you want to come out of the middle part. So there's kind of two ways to do that. And probably the easiest way is the other way, not the way that we just did it. But anyway, so there's our letter E, letter F. Start with a square. Of course. Okay, we're going to do the same thing we did here. We're going to create a rectangle underneath here. Establish how wide we want it. And draw our rectangle. You can see the rectangle here. Erase the line. And I think definitely with the F, let's try this. Let's do this differently this time. Let's go ahead and go like this. Now, instead of going down and back across like we did here, we're just going to go, of course, straight down. And that will form the letter F. And then, as I mentioned on this one, this is the approach we could have used. So see, taking out that much of the middle arm, well, I guess not the middle arm, the bottom arm, since it's an F and not an E. So let's see, let's go ahead and do the G. And I'm going to start with a square, of course. Okay, so now let's go ahead and do the letter G like we did the letter C and D. So we're going to go ahead and round off this edge, creating a triangle in the corner. We're going to round off this edge. And let's round off this edge, the two edges on this side. And finally this edge. Okay, now let's go ahead and start a line across here. Now we're going to follow the same curve that we have going on here. Now we're going to follow the same curve that we have there. Follow the same curve we have here. See that? So, and then we're going to follow the same curve here. And always watching how thick we have it. And then we are going to follow the same curve we have here, watching the thickness here. You can see if I continue this up, it would pretty much merge with that line, which is what we want. Okay, now, so if this is going to be the bottom edge of the G, of the arm of the G, let's call it. So we're going to go across, we're going to go straight up, and then across, again being mindful of the thickness. And there we have our letter G after we erase the line here. Let's do the letter H, starting with a square, of course. Okay, and H is one of the easier letters as well because we're going to do a rectangle here in the middle and a rectangle at the bottom. So we're being mindful of the thickness of our letter as we create I said a rectangle, maybe more of a square. I guess that's more of a square, isn't it? There we go. Of course, we're going to erase this ultimately. And now we go underneath. Again, the same thickness. We want to maintain about the same thickness. We can just start here, continue that down. The same on the other side, and we have our square at the bottom. We're going to erase the line in the middle. And there's our letter H. Let's do the letter I. Again, starting with a square or maybe a slight rectangle. Either shape is going to be fine. In fact, that is much more of a rectangle. So, okay, and again, we're doing capital letters. So this time we're going to take the rectangles out of the side. Rectangle out of this side, rectangle out of that side. Being mindful of the thickness as I start. Do the bottom here. Of course, ultimately we're going to erase this line. And now we do the other side. And it might be easier to start in the middle for some of you. But erase this side and we've got our I. Let's go ahead and do the letter J. Okay, start with our shape. Okay, now we're going to do some rounding here. We're going to round off this corner. Okay, that's going to go away, of course. And we're going to round off this corner. Let's go straight up. Okay, so erase that. These two areas. And let's see, now we're going to establish how far up we want to go on this side, about there I'd say. Go straight across, and again now we're establishing the width of our letter. Now we're going to follow the same curve that we have going on the outside. And as I transition to the main part, I'm going to again be mindful of how wide the letter is. And there we have our letter J. Now we can erase part of what was the square, and that's the letter J. Okay, let's do the letter K. We're going to start with our shape, of course, our base shape of a square. And I got some eraser crumb underneath there, which is affecting my art here. Okay, so letter K. So we're going to create 3 triangles. Okay, now we're going to, again, be mindful of the thickness. And now this triangle is going to have 2 straight sides and 1 at an angle. So what I mean by that is triangles they have 2 angled sides and 1 straight side. Here we're going to have 2 straight sides. See, straight, straight, angle. So that's what we're going to work on here. So we have our straight side started. Now we're going to go ahead and do our angled side. Now, arguably it might be easier to start with this larger triangle, which we're going to start from the point here. See the lowest right point here. And of course we're going to be mindful of our thickness. Like that. And now we're going to go ahead and go up and finish on the point on this side. You see that? Then erase our lines here. Okay, and then now we're going to, again, 2 straight sides. We got our thickness established here. And now we're going to follow this same angle to complete the K at the top. Okay, now let's do our letter L. Starting, of course, with a square. Got my square. I can't get my square the way I want it. Mine was at an angle, and I want it a little bit straighter. Okay, there we go. That looks a little bit better. Create our box. And L's are particularly easy because, again, we're going to establish the width here. And I'm going to create a rectangle or a square in the upper right-hand portion. There we go. And I think I need to go down a little bit more. There we go. And then we're going to go across. And there we have our L.